Okay, guys. So this is a little bit of a walkthrough of your lesson on media and crime. I know some of you have already done this. Some of you may have yet to do it. These videos, I'm going to kind of play with you. The software that I'm using is 15 minutes per video, so I might need to split it into two just to let you know that to begin with. So if I have to cut this short, that's why. So I'll get straight into it then. So this is a brand new topic, and it's quite a nice topic, I think, because a lot of the stuff that we look at within this we've either looked at or touched on before. So you should have a little bit of a prior knowledge to it. So if you're working your way through the PowerPoint, and I suggest that you do, because sometimes if you jump straight into the sheets, they might not necessarily make sense. The Socrative, leave with me. I'm going to export the questions and get them to you, or write them up in a slightly different format. So I will still get you them quizzes so that you can test your knowledge. But in terms of the kind of first main bulk of work that you're supposed to do, just to give a little bit of context, which you might have already read up on, the media has always kind of had a certain relationship when it comes to crime, and that certain relationship tends to be on things that are going to sell newspapers, going to get people in today's day and age going onto their websites and getting views and so on. So there was much of a focus on things like drugs, crime, football hooliganism, terrorism in the 90s, whereas in the past that was obviously not necessarily kind of a key focus. Times change, and obviously if you go back 50 years prior to the 1990s, a lot of the kind of media would have been focused on wartime and things like that. And also recently you've seen a shift to more kind of sexual crimes being particularly focused on it in the media. So the first task that you were supposed to do, was to research some news articles on crime, and then looking at the news values that you've got that Young and Cohen talk about, look at the news article and see which news values kind of marry up with that article, I suppose. So I will just show you the document, just so that you're aware of what document it is that you're supposed to be using. So this was the Google document. So in this column here, you might have written a little bit about the story, what is it, what's it about, that kind of thing, and then just posted the link in that one, quite straightforward. But then in this one, what news values does it hit and how? So here you might have talked about some of the ones that I'm going to go into in a minute, but you might have also potentially kind of taken quotes from that article as well and married it up with certain news values that you can see. So if the story is about violence, then obviously that's going to tip violence, but it might also have in there things like dramatisation and immediacy if it's a breaking news story and that kind of thing. So that is it really, and you do that twice over two separate articles. All right. Just to give you a little bit of an insight into what kind of things you could be looking at. I'm not going to go on any articles in particular, but as you can see on my screen, I'm just on the Independent website, and already just from headlines, I would probably be able to kind of link some of them news values that I'm going to go through in a minute with some of these crimes that I'm looking at, or some of these headlines at least. So the one over here on the right hand side where it says babysitters charged with manslaughter struck toddler's head on table, there you could see violence straight away within that article. That idea about risk could also come through, that people are untrustworthy, and if you leave your children with strangers or whatever, then that could potentially bring them harm. It's personalisation because it's a human story, it's about an individual or a couple of individuals. So there's a couple of things there with that one already just from the headline. If I go down to this one here, where it talks about murder charge after kind and sweet woman found stabbed to death, again, I'm definitely seeing that personalisation come through. I'm seeing that individual victim who's described as kind and sweet, and maybe kind of telling readers that no matter who you are, no matter how nice you are in this world, there is risk involved. You're probably going to see violence. Well, you're definitely going to see violence in there. You're going to see dramatisation of the story. And obviously all of these are breaking news, all of these are breaking stories, so you've seen that immediacy in there as well. So that's the kind of thing that I'm wanting you to do, but obviously going into them articles in a little bit more detail. Now, the actual news values in themselves are pretty straightforward. So immediacy is breaking news. Is it a breaking news story? Which most of the articles that you're going to be looking at are going to be breaking news stories. Is it, number two, is it dramatic? Is it put across in a way where, or does the story hold value of drama? Does it, so for example, if I went to a newspaper outlet and offered a story about something, are they going to, is it dramatic enough for them? Has it got action involved? Has it got some of the other ones that we're going to talk about? Has it got violence? Is it sexual? Is it that kind of thing? So is it a dramatic story that they can almost kind of paint in a light that it's kind of almost non-fiction in a way? So something that's quite bizarre and something that we've never seen before potentially. Then number three, you've got personalisation. So stories sell about individuals because we are individuals, we are humans, and we want to know, especially when we're linking it to crime. People are going to pick up stories about brutal crimes and sex crimes and things like that because it's about individuals, individual victims, individual offenders, and it shocks us, it scares us to the point that we want to know about it. Higher status is always one that tends to kind of creep its way into newspaper articles, and what you might notice as well, which is a good bit of analysis for this, is that the higher status ones are probably going to be the ones where they're the more common crimes. So what we'll find in news is often the crimes that we see are very much dramatic. The crimes that are sexual, that are extremely violent and that kind of thing. Whereas the higher status crimes of basically celebrities, they can do a lot lesser crime and still make their way into newspapers. Whereas if it was just your average Joe Bloggs who committed, say, a speeding crime or a drunk driving crime, you'd never really see that within a newspaper unless it had resulted in some form of death or something like that. Whereas if you see a celebrity like, I never work out which one's which, Ant out of Ant and Dec, who was done for drink driving, that was obviously all over the news. So they look for higher status crimes, and that can often make newspapers compromise on how severe the crime is. If it's a celebrity that's done quite an ordinary crime, they're more likely to throw it in there. So you see a lot of kind of higher status news stories. Simplification. Is it simple? Is it black and white? Can it be told in a way where readers are going to understand it and get the message? That's quite straightforward. Number 6, is it new? Is it an unexpected angle? So you might remember a couple of weeks ago or a week ago, I can't quite remember when we looked at them, I put some headlines on the board with the gender of the perpetrator blocked out. And one of the crimes that I put on the board was that a woman had decapitated her own mother's head. Now that's quite novel. I've not necessarily seen that many stories about that, and it was quite unexpected when I saw it as well. So has it got that element to it? If it has, then a newspaper is probably going to kind of take it and run with it. Risk and violence I've already spoke about a little bit. They want newspapers, which is quite worrying, often want to portray a sense of risk in society. They want risk to kind of reverberate through society because it's what sells. If there's an element of risk, people tend to tune in to news more, buy newspapers more. So take this very example. I know it's not related to crime, but the coronavirus. People are becoming consumed now by the media and the news. They want to know more. I've been reading stories about people or talking to people even about how they're kind of obsessed with the news or any breaking news on the story. The same could be said about things like terrorism if you're linking it to crime. So newspapers often want to talk about vulnerability, often want to talk about fear, and as we're going to look at in a minute, create them kind of moral panics that are in themselves kind of underpinned by risk. And then you've got violence, of course, which is pretty straightforward. Any crime that's going to be extremely violent, gory, that's going to sell as well. Okay, so that one, hopefully you found that quite straightforward. I know sometimes it's not always clear when you're working on your own, you need that little bit of guidance, but that's all I wanted you to do there. So look at a couple of newspaper articles and almost kind of link some of these news values that you're seeing in the middle of the screen to the news article that you've looked at. Okay, then you have got your next task. Your next task is looking at moral panics and then the wider context that create them moral panics, media distortion of crime and how it kind of leads to fear, and then media as a cause for crime. So I'll probably be able to go through one or two of these before I have to stop this video and begin a new one. So moral panics we've looked at before. We know Cohen's study from labelling theory. Cohen's was obviously about the mods and rockers that we're going to go on to in a minute, but there are lots of moral panics that we see throughout the media. Drug crime, knife crime, terrorism, all of these things are moral panics. And what is said about a moral panic is it's just any kind of exaggerated story put forward by the media to try and garner a reaction and try and create a kind of social sense of fear, worry, anxiety about it. But it's also trying to focus people's anxieties onto one specific thing. So some people would say it's trying to divert attention. Some people would say it's trying to get people singing off the same hymn sheet and all have the same common kind of enemy or problem in society. So there are three elements, as you will be able to see within your reading packs, to a moral panic. So the media identify a group as folk devils. So let's take knife crime, for example. That will probably be black youths, male, okay, black male youths. So they will be created as these folk devils, these individuals that we need to worry about within society. Then the newspaper or the media outlet will portray these in a negative, stereotypical fashion. That could be through what they wear, through their kind of behaviours, that they're dangerous, they're threatening, that kind of thing. And the media will kind of run with that. And they'll probably take a case where knife crimes occurred and then blow it all up into kind of this idea that it's occurring everywhere you look, when in reality it might not be. Then you've got moral entrepreneurs, which we've talked about before. So moral entrepreneurs are people who lead a moral crusade against a moral panic within society. So it could be police, it could be political officials, it could be anyone with kind of a level of significance, and they'll condemn the group and its behaviours. So that could be Boris Johnson stood there doing a public address and condemning certain individuals. Then that shifts everyone's attention onto these people as a problem. Okay, so this will then lead to calls for crackdowns on the group. But it also creates self-fulfilling prophecy amongst these folk devils, or these people identified as folk devils. So if that's black youths, for example, then they're going to probably think, well, I've been labelled as deviant. I'm told that I'm a good-for-nothing kind of individual, and all I do is kind of commit crime and things like that. And that will create kind of the deviance amplification spiral where they don't see themselves as someone who can achieve legitimately, who can live their lives legitimately. So they'll turn to crime. They'll get that social reaction from everyone else. They'll turn to crime, and it creates more and more and more crime. That then almost justifies the media's reaction to them in the first place. But these individuals, at the time of the media first cracking down on them, shall we say, may not have actually been that much of a threat to society, but because the media has blown them all out of proportion and created this big problem, they commit more crime off the back of that because of the social reaction. And then people will look at it and go, oh, well, yeah, they are a problem then. But they don't look at the media's role in that, they don't look at the government's role in that. So I'll leave it there for this one, and I will start another one in a second. Okay.